ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. Good morning to everyone. Happy Deepavali for every individual on this globe. Today I will try to give a small information on the human brain. There is a parliament in our human body, that is the brain. This parliament gathers information, supplies to information to different parts of the brain, then discussion goes on, coordination happens, and then discussion of the function is implemented through the body by various ways, and then decision is taken at certain times either to stop it or to continue it. And that is what Dr. Eagleman says about the human brain. So today we will try to understand the basic structure and the function of the human brain. The image what you see today is taken from Eagleman's book, and that indicates the number of millions and millions of actions and reactions and going on in the brain through the chemical messengers. We will try to understand this particular event in a very simple way. Let's try. Come on. Let us try to know the functions of the human brain. Central role in the nervous system, primarily control and coordination of all the bodily functions and its responses. This monitors millions of physiological functions, ensures homeostasis, interacts with external stimuli through perception and action. It comprises billions of neurons, synapses, exceedingly complex structure, enables billions of functions, reflexes, and cognitive behaviors. It has the capacity for learning and adaptation, adapts through the lifespan, learns from experiences. In a simple way, anatomical structure of the brain can be studied. We can divide the brain into four important parts. The cerebrum, the main part of the brain, which contains more number of neurons. The second smaller one called the cerebellum, and the brain stem, limbic system. These are the four important parts of the brain, but each of these may have several regions specialized for various functions. We have to understand that human brain is a very, very complex system, and this complex system works in a very, very coordinated way. That's why Dr. Eagleman calls it the human parliament. The main part is called the cerebrum. It is divided into two hemispheres responsible for higher cognitive functions, sensory perception, and voluntary movements. Let me not discuss these things in detail here. This is only for very, very simple high school students, or maybe for pre-university students, or maybe for the personals who become paramedicals. So let them know each one of these things, because recently my grandson studies clinical psychology. He did not know much of the brain, and I found that their teachers have given them the work to all the children, all the students, to write about different parts of the brain. So this is an attempt to help such students. Then the second part is called the cerebellum. Cerebellum is the coordination center located at the back of the brain. This part plays a critical role in motor control and coordination, ensuring smooth, balanced movements. All the movements we do, including the finger movements. You must know that finger movements are very delicate movements, and these movements are, when once lost, cannot be gained. This can be seen by the people who have got stroke or whose brain, what's called craniotomy, or they open the cranium and then remove a part of the brain due to injuries. In them we can see all the functions may come, but the functions of the fingers and the hand may come very, very late. So that is where the cerebellum comes to play. The brainstem, the next part, is the life support. This connects the brain that is the cerebellum, and the spinal cord that runs through our backbone and regulates vital autonomic functions such as breathing, heart rate, and consciousness. Do any one of us can control our breathing? Can any one of us control our heart rate? Can we control our consciousness? So these are all the functions which are very, 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 very complex, and these are all coordinated by the brainstem through cerebellum and cerebrum. Then the limbic system is the emotional core, housing key structures involved in emotions, memory processing. The limbic system influences behaviors related to the survival and social interactions. So you know that the limbic system again cannot cannot function on its own. It has to consult, it has to discuss, it has to coordinate various functions through the brainstem and following the instructions given by cerebellum and cerebellum. It's a very wonderful structure. People who want to study the brain and do research have got plenty of capacity in this decade. Let's study about the cerebrum. The cerebrum is divisions and the functions. It is involved in doing higher cognitive functions like thinking, decision making, etc. And thinking, it's also called a thinking cap. Without cerebrum, we cannot think. The outer layer of the cerebrum is involved in complex thought process, sensory perception, and motor skills. The motor skills functions as the brain as the command center. That means to say, cerebrum becomes the command center of the brain. It is a command general. Every action that takes place will have to be processed and informed into the brain. It has the frontal lobe, the front portion. Executive functions of the frontal lobe would be responsible for decision making, planning, and impulse control. The frontal lobe is vital in making complex behaviors and social interactions. The great persons like Sir M. Visvesvaraya, or for example Einstein, or any one of these great people, they must have had a very wonderful frontal lobe where decisions were taken in a very, very complex way. All people cannot do such functions. They are all creative functions. Now the brain's research is going on to find out how these things like central frontal lobe and the cerebral cortex help in thinking. Then the parietal lobe is another one. It gets the sensory information, it processes the information. This part processes the tactile information and social creation, regulating sensory inputs to facilitate interaction with our environment. See again, the cerebrum has got many divisions. You know that each part has got its own function, and that's why now people, the great neuroscientist, Dr. David Eagleman, calls a human brain as a parliament of our body. Then there is another thing called temporal and occipital lobes. They are different parts of the brain. This is crucial for auditory processing and memory, while the occipital lobe is primarily responsible for visual processing and perception. See, I have just given only 4 ideas, but each one of these have highly specialized parts. For visual, that is for listening, for talking, for hearing, all these things are different parts in the brain take part, and the command center for all these things is the cerebrum. Now let us see the cerebellum. Cerebellum is coordination and balance center. Cerebellum is smaller than the cerebrum. It contains over 1/2 of the brain neurons. That means the brain may contain trillions and trillions and trillions of neurons. I will tell you what those neurons are. Neurons are nothing but specialized cells inside the brain. Just like the bone has cells, the skin has cells, muscle has cells, human body is completely made up of cells. Each cell has different structure and function in different parts of the body. In the brain, the cells are called neurons. We shall try to know what neurons are in the next presentations. And this cerebellum plays a critical role in processing motor functions. When I say motor functions, it means movement, the eye movement, the hand movement, the tongue movement. My mouth is talking, my mouth is helping talking, and it's producing sound. All these are all motor functions. They are all controlled by cerebellum. Muscle coordination, precision in movement, both voluntary and involuntary muscle movements are controlled by cerebellum. Voluntary means what you want to talk with your consciousness. Involuntary means without your senses. When you sleep, your heart beats, you breathe, many parts of the body might move. They are all involuntary functions which we cannot control, but the cerebellum can control. It balances the posture. It continuously receives input from the body regarding position and movement, allows it to maintain balance and posture effectively. When you drive a motorcycle or when you slip out from somewhere, you try to get up and maintain your balance. That's all done by cerebellum with the help of cerebrum, of course. Then role in motor learning. Cerebellum contributes to motor memory, adapting our movements through practice, and repetition is essential for acquisition of this skill. When you say motor memory, you know when you sit down on your motorcycle or in your car, you want to switch on the ignition. Similarly, when you sit in front of the computer, you want to open the computer by pressing a button. All these are all memory skill. That means the skill is again involved many types of memories. All these are controlled by cerebellum, but in coordination with cerebrum. The brainstem is vital for various functions and regulations. It's called gateway to autonomic regulation and signal transmission. Signal transmission means something, somewhere, some information comes to the brain, and that information is converted into signals, electrical signals or neurochemical signals, and those things pass through the brainstem. And sometimes it's also called the midbrain. It plays a role in coordinating fine motor control and serves as crucial pathway for visual and auditory information. We shall know more about the brainstem in the next PPTs or in the next presentation. It has part like pons. It bridges between regions. It acts as connective bridge. The pons transmits signals between the cerebrum, and which regulates sleep and arousal. That means your sleep, you are getting up at if you sleep and then tell your brain you want to get up at 4 o'clock, maybe one day it is difficult, second day, third day, fourth day, you will just get up at 4 o'clock without any alarm. These are all the functions controlled by pons. Then there is another part called medulla oblongata. It is the autonomic control center. Autonomic means movements and activities which are not under your control. This region controls vital autonomic functions such as respiration, heart rate, blood pressure, which is essential for survival. Many times doctor may say your heart rate is quite high. It's called arrhythmic. The heart movement is not rhythmic in your thing. All these are controlled by medulla oblongata, that is one part of the brain. Then signal transmission across the body. See, when once the signal is produced in the brain in any part, it gets through different parts and goes across the body, and this is a very important function that the brainstem can take. The brainstem serves as a critical function in transmitting signals between the brain, spinal cord, and enabling communication. Spinal cord is another part of the brain that is seen in our backbone. Inside the backbone, there is a backbone has got a tube-like structure. The vertebrae will form a tube. Inside that, the extension of the brain comes in, and that is the spinal cord. But the reverse might happen. First, the spinal cord may develop in the development, then comes the pons, the cerebrum, cerebellum, and the final part is cerebrum. But for our discussion, we start with the cerebrum as the first part. So when you study the development of the human body inside the womb of the mother, you will find out how the brain starts developing as a small structure and finally becomes the brain. Therefore, sometimes it's called, the cerebrum is called telencephalon, means last part. So mesencephalon and different names are there, which I will not discuss here. You may study it in your classes. Just to remember that the brain has different parts. A diagram is taken from the Creative Commons. It is one hemisphere of the brain. Brain has two hemispheres. Each hemisphere contains one part called the cerebral cortex, the uppermost part. Then we got the cerebellum, the second part, tree-like structure which is seen there, and the brain stem is there. You can see it is connecting all the parts, and the limbic system, a very small part which may contain amygdala and so many other parts, which is a control center of our emotions, our anger, our laughter, our smile, our gestures in the face. All these things are controlled by limbic system. Please try to understand more. This is only one hemisphere, so the two hemispheres are connected. How they are connected, how the crossover of the information takes place, all these things are very important. If the left side of the human brain is damaged, right side functions will not happen. If the right side of the human brain is damaged, left will not happen. If some part inside the brain got a bleed due to some injury, if that portion is removed by removing the brain box or the cranium, then some parts will not function. You must have seen people with the brain operation. They will not be able to control their hands, or they may lose the vision, they may lose the talk. So you can see the brain is, as Dr. David Eagleman calls it, the brain is sometimes referred to the parliament of our body. So try to understand these things. It's a very, very complex system. Need not write examination. but try to understand what the brain does. There are many books which can tell you about the brain functions. In this one, the limbic system is explained slightly in a different way. Limbic system is responsible for emotion and memory. Exploring the intricate components and functions of the limbic system helps you to understand how the emotions are controlled. There is a small part called hippocampus. It's a memory formation. It is crucial for the formation of new memories and spatial navigation. The hippocampus is integral in transitioning information from short-term to long-term memories. You know, sometimes when we get aged, we find out, we remember what happened in our younger days. Maybe when I am 4 years or 5 years old, many things that happened is stored in the brain, and that can be remembered. That is the long-term memory. But sometimes what I heard about 5 minutes ago, I cannot remember. That is short-term memory. So these, for writing examinations, you require short-term memory. For doing many things like a surgery or any operation, any repair, you require long-term memory. All these things are controlled by a small part called hippocampus in the brain. You can see in the diagram there is a small green part called hippocampus that controls. Then there is another part called amygdala. This is the emotional processing center. Amygdala is key to processing emotions such as fear, pleasure, and influences emotional behaviors and memory recall. Sometimes when you see a person, you get angry. Sometimes when you see a person, you become highly pleased and you smile. All these things are not controlled by you. It's controlled by a small part in the limbic system called amygdala. Then behavioral responses, instincts and reactions. The limbic system plays a pivotal role in guiding our instincts and forming reactions based on emotional experience impacting our social behavior. Sometimes when you see a person, you smile and you want to talk. Sometimes when you see a person, you want to slap him. All these things are possible. They are called emotional experiences which happens in your brain without your knowledge, but of course you will be conscious, and these are all controlled by the limbic system. The limbic network, it's called the network, an interconnected system. Interconnected structures of the limbic system communicate with various brain regions involving emotional responses and behaviors related to the survival. That means many functions are taken care by limbic system, but any system, any activity, any emotion to be done is to be controlled by cerebrum, cerebellum and all the other parts of the body. Therefore, any function or any reaction what you do is not independent. It is coordinated, it is discussed, it is understood, and then the brain gives a command, and therefore brain is a command center for all our activities. Now we come to neurons and the neurotransmission. Neurons are the basic cellular structure of the brain. The entire brain is made up of what's called neurons. We will discuss that in the next PPT. And neurons are very small structures having different parts. I will tell you in the next PPT. And it is the understanding the building blocks and the brain structure and communication, neurons. Communication unit of the brain composed of its neurons. Each neuron has a cell body, axons and dendrites. These generate and communicate electrochemical signals across the body, forms a vast network. Sometimes Dr. Eagleman calls the forest of neurons. When you think of forest, you have many things to happen inside a forest. Forest is not just a small collection of trees and plants and shrubs, but it may contain many animals, many microorganisms, and millions of organisms which have intricate interactions, and that is forest. Now, sometimes brain is considered as a forest of the neurons, where many things will be happening at the same time. The the neurons are the connecting parts. Each neuron has a synapses, and these are critical junctions that are essential for communication between neurons, neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are chemicals that are produced in the neurons, and they carry signals in and out in the form of electrical impulses. Neurotransmitters are chemicals that act as messengers to transmit signals across synapses, influences functions like moods and emotions and behaviors. Today, a large amount of neurological research is going on, and since 3 or 4 days ago, I have seen in the TV that in the brain, if the tumors are there, tumors can be reduced into half by some radiochemicals. People do not know how neurotransmitters are produced and how they are sent across. The process of signal transmission involves very complicated electrochemical potential across the neural network. That means in the neurons, in the brain, there will be chemical activity and then production of signals of the electrical signals. That means neurons, electrons and protons are produced and dissolved. So all these finer structures are studied by means of what's called neurotransmitters. Here is a simple picture image of the neuron. Like this, millions and trillions of neurons are there in the human body, each one specializing in a different function. You see it has got a star-shaped cell body. Inside there is a nucleus. It has small branches called the dendrites, and then it has got a long structure called the axon. Axon, as at the end, has got the branches, and the entire thing is covered by what's called swan or mycelium sheath. They have different functions. I will not discuss that. And this is the structure of a neuron, and the neuron may vary in shape, size, and its functions. I talked about neurotransmitters, and here is the picture A talks about the two ends of the one end of the neuron called the axon, and the other end is also connected by means of a central region and is called synapses or synapse, connection between two neurons, and it is here the electrical signals produce impulses, and then chemicals are produced called neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters are released into synapses, a small place, a gap between the two, one axon and the dendrite, or what's called the nerve endings. And then this is a true picture, the electron picture of the synapse, where the neurotransmitters are produced. This is not the time for me to discuss in detail, but try to understand any function that happens in the body will have to be transmitted through neurotransmitters. The most important idea you have to remember would be brain's plasticity. That means brain is able to adapt, learn, and change. The moment we are born, the brain has got its functions. From the day of the birth till the end of our life, brain learns, readjusts, adapts, and changes everything at every moment. That's called neuroplasticity. It is the brain's ability to adapt, recognize, reorganize new neural connections throughout life in response, experience, disease, and injury. Anything that happens is responded from the brain. New synapses are formed which helps in rewiring neural pathways which facilitate new learning and adaptation. So it's called neural pathways, means the signals pass through only the neurons, nothing else. It cannot pass through muscles. It cannot pass through any part of the body except the wired, that is what we call axons, and that is the neurons. So just like the electricity passes only through the wire, all the brain activities, brain functions and brain instructions are passed through the neural pathways, that is through the neurons. Understanding neural plasticity enhances our ability to learn and adapt, rehabilitate and recover from injuries. So if you become a doctor, if you become any person connected with the study of the brain, you understand these things much more than what a ordinary BSc student or an ordinary MSc student can do. I hope some of you will become doctors. Try to understand the neuroplasticity. Then the neuroplasticity framework helps in recovery, allowing the brain to compensate for the lost functions and reorganizing. So even if 2 or 3 or a group of neurons are left behind after injury, these things can reorganize. Earlier days, people thought that the neurons, when once they are produced, they cannot be reproduced. But today's research tells neurons are regenerated. It's a very complicated process. Neurons first thought will not, when once the loss happens, nothing can be done. But today scientists say neurons are regenerated. That refers to brain's plasticity. This is a wonderful function called the brain-blood barrier, safeguarding the brain's environment. Inside the brain there are very minute blood capillaries, but blood passes through. When the blood goes into the brain, all the blood will not get into the brain part. There is a barrier, and only a few parts of the food we take, a few chemicals that is produced will get into brain. Sensitive, it's called selective blood filtration. Some ions or some nutrients are passed into the brain, and which all of them will not go into the brain. Whatever you take will not go to the brain, but maybe some ions, some portions may get into brain, others will come out. Most important function is the selective permeability of the molecules and in and out of neurons. Neurons cannot absorb all the if you take carbohydrate molecules or the protein molecules or amino acids or protein or the complex, the B complex and vitamins, and anything you take, anything you ingest into the system, it goes to the brain, but the brain is highly selective, and that barrier will allow only a limited and the selective way. It's called selective filtration. The CNS is nothing but central nervous system, maintains homeostasis, means homeostasis is maintaining the equilibrium inside the brain and outside the brain, in and around neurons to perform optimal functions. Whatever the temperature may be outside, human body temperature is constant. That's because of the brain's activity. The blood-brain barrier understanding is very crucial for clinical implications. That means what the doctors can do, what injections they have to give, what chemical they have to push into the body. Supposing if somebody like me, I became hypo, means low blood sugar several times. When the blood sugar drops down to a particular thing, what is the chemical that will have to go inside the body, which the brain can come back to the function? When the blood sugar becomes very low, brain doesn't function. The last part of the brain will not function. But if you put some glucose into the mouth and put some water, immediately it is ingested, taken into the intestine and goes to the brain immediately, and the brain start recovery and the heart start recovery. All this is due to blood-brain barrier. It's a wonderful thing, but to study, I will not. I am encouraged to tell you more and more, but I cannot remember also, and I cannot explain to you incompletely. Therefore, please read the books like the Brain written by Dr. Eagleman, or many books are written by him. Please try to read and understand. As a common man, ordinary man, you may not be a doctor for that. Now we talk about neurological disorders that are present in the brain due to injury or due to attack of the microbes or due to any other reasons. There may be some disorders. Let's see what they are. Research and exploring neurological functions helps to treat many disorders like Alzheimer's disease, stroke, Parkinsonian disease. These are the diseases very common among the elderly people. You have seen elderly people losing memory disruption, cognitive loss. They will not know what to do due to aging, accidents and diseases. That's called Alzheimer's disease. Today a lot of research is going on Alzheimer's. Then stroke, sudden disruption of the bodily function due to interrupted blood flow. Supposing blood flow stops to your fingers for some time due to many reasons. Imagine the blood will not come to your fingers. Then the fingers will all become like this and the movement is not possible. Sometimes stroke, the blood flow will not come to the to this portion. Then it goes like a monkey's thing. So many things will happen. That's called stroke. That is due to sudden disruption of the blood flow, injury, depending upon which part of the brain and the neural network is affected. Parkinson's disease, movement challenges. That means due to motor dysfunction, movement, if the cerebellum is not functioning properly, movement is affected completely. Transmitters in dopamine producing neurons are affected in some parts of the brain called substantia nigra. I will not go into details here. So these are all the neurological disorders. Neurological disorders might happen due to injury, due to disease, due to old age, or many other functions that will happen, neurological disorders. Students who want to continue on the brain, they have to do brain research. Now, brain research uses many technologies. Imaging techniques like MRI and fMRI for non-invasive visualization of the brain anatomy to understand brain functions. Today, doctors and neurologists can see brain parts, how the brain part functions. As the first image I have given, inside, if you take the brain with the radioactive materials, there will be scintillating structures happening like our Deepavali lights. So many things light and come and go, bright and dim structures will happen in the brain that can be studied by image techniques. PET scans means positron emission tomography. This is to understand the metabolic process in the brain. Metabolism refers to which ions are taken, which molecules are taken, what happens in the brain, what chemical reaction happens in the brain can be studied. Brain-computer interfaces and neuroprosthetics help potential therapeutic benefits. Today in America, many scientists and many parts, many scientists are trying to put chips inside the brain. And when the chips are put, it is a interface between the brain and the computer. chip is put, and they're producing today. We have the artificial intelligence, AI, coming. Whatever information you want, you get in the flip of a second. All these are happening because brain-computer interfaces. Brain research helps us understand cognitive process that we have yet to discover and cause neural disorders and clinical approaches. That means we can cure many things by understanding the brain researches. Future brain research. A brain is shown here and different parts of the brain is shown in different colors. Each part can be researched by means of technologies. More and more research on brain functions via neurological research using newer technologies might give us a deeper understanding of myths and brain functions. It's called myth. No one knows how the brain functions, but we know the brain functions. So try to understand each part of the brain, and you know a brain is a myth. This presentation is made for students who completed their intermediate or PUC, and they have learned something about the brain. But paramedicals and those people who work in different areas should know something more about the brain. Therefore, I have given this. My credits are due to ChatGPT, Dr. David Eagleman, Internet, and Creative Commons. It is a compilation of information for students to learn and pursue research on the human brain. Whatever information given is learned by me, and it is not my own information. I thank you very much for viewing this, if you are viewing this particular thing. Thank you.